Welcome to the 2025 Dialogue, a masterclass series by the HR Association of India. I am Neha Jignani, and today's conversation revolves around a theme that continues to reshape the very foundation of how we work: sculpting inclusive workplaces from awareness to action. To walk us through this critical journey of change, I'm honored to introduce someone who's truly a force in the field of inclusion, empowerment, and workplace transformation. Welcoming Dr. CHR Raina Khatri Tandon. She is the founder and CEO of Right to Rise, India's first and only ISO certified end to end service provider accredited with ISO 17024 and 21001 for POSH, POXO trainings, certifications, compliance, and auditing, and the RKT Foundation based in Mumbai. A five-time TEDx speaker, international author, and an independent director, she's passionate about advocating for human rights, cyber safety under the DPDP Act. As president of WICCI Maharashtra T&D Council and an expert panelist with the Center of Global Inclusion, she drives systemic change by empowering individuals and organizations to build safer, more inclusive, and responsible communities. A recipient of Exceptional Woman of Excellence Award by the Women Economic Forum and Best Organization into DEI 2021 by Global HR Transformance Forums, Dr. Rena was also the only woman leader speaker in the WLS Inclusion Summit 2021. Her ISO certified organization has been featured in international magazines for pioneering inclusive workplace solutions and digital interventions. Her first book, We All Have Rights, was launched officially on Amazon, Flipkart, and Kindle this year in March 2025. She has impacted about 2 lakh lives, 400 plus organizations, and 80 institutions, along with international awardee, and has certified 500 plus professionals in POSH, POXO, and DEI in the past 7 years. Dr. Rena, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much, Neha. I think I thank gratefully and thankfully to HRAI, an association where HR leaders come together, and also specifically you for coming together to make this happen. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much. It's our pleasure, Dr. Reina. So to begin with, my first question to you on this masterclass is, what does true inclusion look like in action? Not just in policies or statement, but actually in action.
Wonderful. So interestingly, this question is posed to a person who makes policies and who makes documents, structures, foundations for organization. And today I am told to speak on the other side of the coin, that beyond paperwork, beyond these structures, beyond the foundation that you've already laid as the first year, uh, companies always ask, do we really need to I make almost 108 to 110 policies for a new MSME when they're starting off in their business. And they always ask, Rena, what is that important thing that we need to make? We don't need to make all of them. But when we start off, what could be the basic? Then over the next year, they build the next level. And once your foundation is set, what could be the next level? Okay. So I always say, setting policies is like laying your first level of cementing or first level of sand and stone, beyond which your structure of building cannot be higher. So if you're looking to build an organization for the next 5 years, today we are sitting in the beginning of the next new year, 2025. We have so many different technologies coming in. We have AI, we have Gen Z, we have so much change and transitioning happening, that you have to understand that it's just not if you put A for apple on paper, it happens on the same way. So if you're not going to lay down a policy, it's not going to build your culture. It's not going to set up the system. And why should people just get out of the blue and start following whatever you write on paper, even if it is a mandatory law?
Right.
So inclusion goes beyond policies, beyond the paperwork. It's always about listening, hearing, connecting, and keeping a welcomed, respected workspace. When we walk into the organizations, we always see how maybe the leaders are speaking to the peers are speaking to their subordinates, how are they valuing each other. In fact, in the next few questions, I'll also bring in the examples of how walking into some of the companies, even their mere communication or the way they dress or the way they sit with each other. Uh, some of them have very marginal groups. Some of them have groups which are even on the plant side, some on the factory side, and some white collared who could be very formally speaking to you. You'll know how this inclusion becomes so much as a everyday coming instead of just putting it on paper. So I'll just put 3 points here. Diverse hiring practices that we already know, because that sets you as you get into any organization. The hiring is the first process.
Right.
Open communication, employee retention policies, and beyond that, it's the value and the equality that we provide to people on a one-to-one basis. It's
Right.
about addressing some barriers when we are talking across different genders, across peer groups, across collaborative environments, because diverse learning, diverse communication can happen only when you keep your doors open to everybody. So I would just say engagement is the key. Whether you do communication, whether you do diverse learning, whether you do peer-peer support, whether you address the challenges, have mentoring supports, etc., etc. But beyond all that, it's always about connect.
Sure.
Connect and collaboration is the word for you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Dr. Rena. That really brings the concept of inclusion to life. I loved how you mentioned listening, hearing, adding value to people, valuing people around you should be your natural way of leading everyday life around people. And to summarize, you said it starts with diverse hiring practices, which is the beginning of everything. Then there should be open communication, and last but not the least, employee retention policies that comes into picture. And of course, how engagement is the key to creating that ecosystem for people to feel included. So thank you so much for that. So to move on, I want to know, what do you think, where do most organizations fall short, especially when they are transitioning from creating DEI awareness to leading to that implementation aspect of it?
Wow. So, again, a very interesting question that many people, I would say, nowadays don't pay for, but they seek you out if you are a person who's listening to them, who's approachable, who's hearing them. They would call you and say, hey, Rena, we want to have a free brainstorming session with the leaders, which I have had with many organizations. They are not documented, they are not live online, they are not on LinkedIn. You can't speak about them or talk about them, but you can have very many organizations who reach out and say, can we just have a brainstorming session? These are only with our internal leaders. And I've had many of them, fortunately. Uh, One important thing that I see is when we are talking about diversity inclusion, what we do is we follow everything with a T. So there is a structure that is set up by a big company. They've been following it for many years. They go to the end and verge of burning out the employees or training your brain in such a way that please follow what is being set first.
Right.
So something that is set is understandable, but the resilience to follow it with the different generations from Gen X to Gen Y to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which is coming in, you have different multi-generational people coming in. So
Right.
apart from your different sexes, your different sexualities, your gender, you also have different generations coming in. You must have the resilience of understanding, they are very different. They might be different in emotions, they might be different in expressing. Some of them will not express. So if you're just going to get up and say, hey, we want equality, 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 maybe a senior person may not even open his mouth, but a young generation might open his mouth depending on how your communication flow is. How can you prevent any kind of failures? You can never prevent it. And it's always better if you fail, because if you fail, then you're growing.
Right.
So I would never say you don't fail. I would say fail. Fail as many times, because as many times you're failing, you're thinking twice, you're thinking creatively, you're thinking innovatively of how these strategies inside your organization can work better. What are the pitfalls at every point? How is the transition journey going? How are you embracing diversity, equality, equity, and including different people all the time? So here I come with different color people also, people who are coming even from outside sometimes, because you have international companies. And three things which I'm going to tell you. One, be genuine. a genuine commitment to whomsoever you speak. I see most of the people on the top, the leaders, the companies, the stories always lack genuine commitment. They don't speak with genuinity that this is what we are, this is the state where we are, we don't know how DNI is to be incorporated, we don't show our vulnerabilities, we are not even seeking out solutions, or we even don't talk to our own people that, we have this policy set, how do you see it? How do you want to implement it at different stages? How is your team doing it? So maybe going up to the hiring team, going up to the the HR team, going up to the legal team, going up to the sales, distribution, workforce, going up to the white collar, blue collar. Everybody might have different thoughts. So
Right.
one, genuine commitment. Two, be authentic. Open up the reports, open up data, and see how that is supporting in other companies who could be your own stakeholders, your own people who are at the same level or maybe in different areas, sectors, but still working on the same aspect of DNI. Inadequate understanding of DNI, no data, no understanding from peers, superficial grasp of, okay, we are doing a DNI, fair enough, and making up a report or a white paper will not help. So one, genuine commitment. Two, authenticity check and being there with the people and communicating with them and understanding of the concepts of DNI. And finally, three, failure to actually implement whatever they say. There are people who probably say, okay, we'll do a panel discussion, we'll do a brainstorming, we'll hear the leaders, we'll hear the peers, we'll hear our subordinates, we'll hear some of them who hear us. Then we get all the inputs. Now what with the inputs? If you lack action to put those inputs into place, then you're not integrating anything and that will yield in failure. Of course, your strategy will not grow. Your product development will not grow. Your hiring practices might not grow and best decision making may not happen because we always speak DNI with decision making. And leaders are those who can take that decision, take that action. So don't fail to integrate those practices in your setup. So that's for this question, I think three of them, the genuine commitment, the authenticity check and the data connect with the people, and failure to integrate all what you get as inputs from them into your business strategy, growth unit, production unit, and decision making.
Right, beautifully put. Thank you so much for breaking it down so clearly. Very helpful, Dr. Raina. So this brings me to the next question, which is how can leaders at every level, take ownership in their space in building the inclusive work environment, and what they can do to enhance that in everyday decision making?
Okay. So this is going to be a little difficult for some of us, but we'll try and break it up in more simplified projects or a simplified step-to-step analysis. Now, India has a very varied class of people. One, SMEs, MSMEs, people who are running factory setup or people who are not too much into compliances and they are only doing their business. Mostly the people, who are running very legendary businesses, whether it's into beverage, whether it's into food, whether it's into grains, cosmetics, aplam banana, papad banana, food industry, masala industry. These are not people who follow too much of, paperwork and compliances. But yet, if they are having labor force in their setup, if they are having child rights, if they are having human rights, if they are having policies, which they have to show on uh, risk, ESG, ethics, governance, compliances, etc., they have to still follow the basic norms. Okay, where we see these kind of leaders and we see people in factories or companies or ITs and automation, they will see different DNI aspects, they will see different DNI aspects to be incorporated. I'm saying whether you are a person who don't follow too many compliances or you are a company who follow too many compliances, let there be some understanding of what is DNI first. DNI is just not, okay, you get different kind of people, put them together. DNI is not that you get different kind of workforce, put them together. DNI is just not, okay, give equal value, equal pay, equal propositions to all, and equal time to come and go. Can we ever be equal on that? No. We can't have women and men. We can't have young and old. We can't have person who's skilled and person who's probably very naive or novice coming to your company to leave and go at the same time. Can they be paid equal? No. Even if you have two people who are working at the same place, same level, yet you will not see them getting paid. And no matter you say ki Even if women are growing on the top, they should leave as equivalently late as the men. You will always give them the space of leaving early and being safe, because that's how Indian culture is built. So when we are talking about leadership, we have to demonstrate leadership in probably 5, 6 different ways. One is, how is it impacting being an open organization who's ready to hear what you want to grow in the organization. So access to a more broader talent pool of people. You have people from different states or different backgrounds. It also depends on how they are more creatively or innovatively bringing the thought process to this broader talent pool. The next point that leaders should keep in mind when we are working on D&I initiatives is increased profitability. What kind of personnel is bringing the areas of expertise, not only in better practices or better structures and systems as a manager, but also getting the word in terms of getting more projects, maybe on the marketing aspect, maybe bringing in more clientele in terms of having the communication right and the outcomes that are to be met. The third important aspect was improving the sense of belongingness. Why would somebody who's very newly come to your organization or spend very many years still bonded in terms of the growth and the scalability of your organization? Is only when the culture is woven in such a way that it's not only connected with monetary benefits or with promotions, but also with a bond of sense of belonging, sense of culture, sense of connect, and sense of just being there for somebody. And finally, I think higher employee retention or improved decision making comes when we are again having a very clear crystal communication, that's hearing out and listening out. That will ultimately give you a better leadership and a better company culture. So these are some of the tips that I see that leaders at different levels, maybe if you're looking at different teams, different structures, different units, or different areas, these leaders having different teams of 4 to 10 or even smaller or even bigger would break up and see who's good at what, their USPs, and look at these 5, 6 points: access to a broader pool of people who can bring different initiatives, increase profitability, improve the sense of belonging and culture, being crystal clear in communication and employee retention, and ultimately it will give good decision making, improve company culture, and also improve the leadership traits of the company overall. So that's the D&I for the and maybe the cluster heads, the business heads, the branch heads, and many more.
Sure. Thank you so much. I think that's such a powerful reminder, Dr. Reina, that leadership, inclusive leadership rather, is not just limited to the titles. It is more about your mindset and behavior towards the workforce that you're leading. So thank you so much for that. So moving on, I want to know, what are some of the practical ways to identify and eliminate unconscious biases at the workplace?
Right. How do you think we get biases? Biases can be from anything or anywhere. We've heard so many different biases, and we've had master classes, and we've got expert sessions where people say bias comes in many different ways. Bias is something that we can get by childhood, by birth, by culture, by society. Now, if you have to remove that bias, we have to first get to understand that that bias is actually there in us. How are we going to remove it is only when we are actually aware about that bias inside us. I always say unconscious bias is something that can never move away from us. Even when I work into areas of POSH and POXO, we are doing investigations, we're writing reports, we're hearing out people, we're giving what are the steps that we can take towards aggrieved and respondent, or when we are doing fair practices basis in D&I. Okay. In D&I, we have policies, we have effective workplace, we have fair recruitments, we have equal advancement, anti-discrimination policies, again, accessibility of how people are using things, and finally, open feedback. These are some of the steps that we are following when we are creating a D&I system. But when we are creating, we need to understand this will vary based on the flexibility of every place. So support flexibility, open feedback, open communication, accessibility is the foundation. How can you remove the bias? You can remove the bias when you do these 5 things. If you have an open environment, open communication, open clarity, open feedback. Feedback is something people don't achieve and will probably not achieve because feedback is never taken positively. How many constructive feedback sessions or unbiased feedback sessions or unbiased feedback, open communication sessions that we have, we keep on doing them and reiterating them to our leaders or to our peers for the reason it is always on the top of the head that no matter we see a South Indian guy or a North Indian guy, no matter we see a regional bias, no matter we see our own unconscious bias that maybe this person or this quality of person has cheated us, we will still hold that bias.
Right.
How do we work it effectively? I have seen a lot of them doing it during hiring practices, avoid the age, rub off the surname, just have the first name, not have the surname, not have the age written, probably not mention whether you're male or female, maybe sometimes not look at how old or young are you, maybe not look at what are the areas you've only worked on, but look at what are the areas that they can bring greatness to an organization with certain USPs looking. So
Right.
some of the practices are happening only at the hiring position. I would always say to remove bias, there should be a lot of smaller discussions, smaller dinner meets, smaller canteen meets, smaller peer-to-peer meets, smaller panel discussions where people are allowed to talk and not only the speaker or the specialist or the manager. When you have communication, the best way is people tell you what worked, what didn't work, what they like, what they don't like. Don't look at it as a personal one-to-one, crunch, but look it as what is behind that emotion that is coming out to tell you.
Right.
Maybe that will give a more clearer understanding of removing the bias. So that could be one of the ways that you can do it.
Sure, sure. Thank you so much. Beautifully put, Dr. Rena. It's all about your interaction. You're listening to people. You're giving an opportunity to people to speak up. That's what is something that can be crucial when it comes to identifying those biases and also when it comes to eliminating them. So thank you so much. So this brings us to the last question, Dr. Rena, for this masterclass is, if you can share a real example where inclusion was successfully embedded into workplace and what really made it work.
Uh, So before I come to a real-time example, some of the examples that I always iterate with organizations is one with Delta Airlines. So Delta Airlines is not a very, very probably known or sought out airlines that you would have heard of, but some of them hear of it because it's a US-based airline. Uh, Fortunately, they have done something very different that has made them to stand above. 10% of their boost in the global market penetration in 2024 was working on D&I initiatives. What they said was we would have more women force and men force. What we would do differently is probably create an equal proposition on people flying out and people on the ground and many other initiatives that they took, which unlocked newer opportunities and made them a different stakeholder in comparison to maybe Lufthansa or British Airways and fostering more communications and innovation. Okay, now why would they bring in this kind of workforce? They are bringing in more different talent pool of people who they can explore with, also with different age groups to see whether they are achievers, whether they are bringing out more outcomes in a lesser span of time, whether they are more effective and they are still creating more benefits rather than becoming a challenge for them. So this was something that I always say that don't look at the company or its growth like a horse rider where you have nothing across, but there could be different ways that maybe a person who you can never think having a skill come and change everything behind for you. Another important example we know of Accenture, who has been growing as one of the best and the topmost D&I leader. If you're looking at a real-time example, uh, I had been to two, three organizations. I won't take names of any of those organizations. One was a completely North Indian organization which had only women folk from South India. Now, this is a challenge for a North Indian to speak with South Indian folk. And they were basically into grain making industry, people who could make, papads and applams and people who are into masalas. For a North Indian to speak to all and only women folk, it's a complete women organization. Even the people, the leadership are completely women except for him and maybe three other board of directors. The entire organization women folk and mostly picking leaders from there. Why he picked leaders from there? He had a particular thought process of how he's going to scale, not only in the topmost part of the company, but also at the bottom end of the company, of the country. And the reason for them is they work more number of hours and they're more passionate about that work rather than maybe getting some other folk of people. I'm not sure what his thinking was, but he tried something very unique. His first setup was in Noida and Palwal area, and then he went down south at Bangalore and other places. But he said that worked well for him. Second important thing was a company which is completely into perfume. They had all employees who were blind, deaf, and who were not completely sound in terms of all the senses. But we call them specially privileged. Now, a perfume company all requires is that you are working with an extra sense of understanding the product. And nobody could think of that you don't want somebody who doesn't have all the senses but can be very effective working people because they have very strong senses of probably a hearing and smell in comparison to their sight. And they could perform all the operations without having bias of, who is what, who is a leader, who's on the top, who's on the bottom, who's giving them instructions. So for him, the amount of productivity that came out was huge. His data statistics showed how well his system is working and growing 2 force, 3 force, and 4 force. And within a span of, say, 5 years, he had almost 3 setups. So similarly, I've seen companies who've tried something very different in their initiatives. And what worked for them could not work for us. What worked for us may not work for them based on the sector, the region, the nature, the society, a lot about sustainability today. I only say try the different initiatives and the different DE&I aspects that we look for fostering change. And surely some leadership trait might come out, the decision makers will shine out to you, and then you know that these are the go-to people in your setup who are around you, who can support you and be there till you are at the DNI, chart with the right statistics.
Right. Thank you so much. I think those examples, Dr. Raina, really shows how what's possible when inclusion is lived and not just talked about. So the key two examples
Yes.
that you share were filled with passion and inclusivity. So thank you so much for that. So this brings us to the end of the masterclass, Dr. Raina, and I thank you on behalf of HRAI for taking out time. You have helped us move beyond just theory to look at some actionable insights to create that inclusive workplace, be it from everyday leadership choices to addressing those unconscious biases. Your message was very clear that inclusion must be lived and not just stated. So thank you so much for your time and insights today.
Thank you so much. I think it was a pleasure and an honor to be here and add the valuable sites. I only say one thing. You cannot always know people. It's impossible to know them very deeply. And it's not possible to also get them liked or likable. But always listen out to them to understand from which perspective they come. And I'm sure D&I will be just across the corner. Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much. Beautifully put, Dr. Anna. I'll just have a quick note to our listeners. Thank you so much for tuning into this masterclass. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. And if you would like to leave a review, we'll be very happy. Until we meet next time, stay inspired and keep leading with heart. Thank you so much.